Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Thursday, May 19th, 2022, and welcome back in to the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we recap another Orioles loss. That is 6 in a row that the O's have lost. Things have certainly taken a turn after the O's started off May red hot, winning 3 out of 4 series. Not the case anymore. They fall 3-2 to the Yankees on Wednesday night. I'll get to the 5 things you need to know from that loss. Then we are joined by John Mioli, the author of Maximizing Playoff Odds, the fantastic newsletter that John does covering the Baltimore Orioles. Of course, he used to cover the O's for the Baltimore Sun. And John is back on this podcast to talk a bit about what it's been like to shift over to the newsletter. We talk about his trip to Bowie on Tuesday night, seeing Gunnar Henderson hit 2 home runs, and what he's seen from Gunnar all season. A little bit about some of the other guys he saw in Bowie on Tuesday, and then some general chat about the Orioles minor leagues and his thoughts on the entire Adley Rutschman promotion situation. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So we start today with a look back at another Orioles loss. But before we do that, just want to thank you for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. We're free and available here on all podcast listening platforms. Make sure to leave a rating and a review, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or another one. It really helps us out. And of course, the podcast here on YouTube as well. Like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube channel. It really helps us and wouldn't be here without you, the listeners. So thank you again for making Locked On Orioles your first podcast listen of the day. And for your first listen today, we start with an Orioles loss. They fall 3-2 to the New York Yankees at Camden Yards on Wednesday night. It's the 6th consecutive loss for the Orioles as they now drop to 14-24 on the season. First time they have been 10 games under 500 on the year, and they have now officially lost the series, lost the first 3 of 4 against the Yankees in this 4-game set. And I'll get to the 5 things that you need to know from this Orioles loss to the Yankees. And the first thing you need to know, Jordan Lyles was on his game and probably just had his best start in an Oriole uniform. Lyles on the day goes 7 innings, allowing just 3 runs, only 2 of them earned on 5 hits. He strikes out 8. He did not walk anyone, and he threw 106 pitches. Lyles now has a 4.11 ERA on the season in an Orioles uniform. Now, he did give up 7 hard hit balls, and the first inning was not good by any stretch. But that first inning is when he gave up all 3 runs to this Yankee lineup. And frankly, it really could have been just 1 run. If he makes some better pitches, it could have been 0 runs. He starts the game by retiring Aaron Hicks and Aaron Judge. He's got nobody on and 2 outs in the first inning. And then Rizzo with a bloop single. Donaldson shoots one through the right side. Gleyber Torres rocks an RBI double into right center field to make it 1-0. And then second and third with 2 outs. And Lyles bounces a pitch. It gets away from Ben Boom. If Lyles got to home plate a little bit quicker, there could have been a play at the plate. But then Ben Boom's flip gets away from Lyles, gets past Tyler Nevin. Disastrous play on a wild pitch that allows 2 runs to score. The second one, of course, being unearned on the error by the catcher Ben Boom to make it 3-0. And you're thinking, oh boy, things are going downhill. But he kind of pulls himself together a little bit, strikes out Joey Gallo to end the inning, and then just rolls through the next 6 innings scoreless. It was really, really impressive what Jordan Lyles did in this one. And, you know, really the 8 strikeouts were some of the most impressive thing that he did. But, I mean, just to roll through this Yankee order, I mean, we've seen him do it before in that first series between the Orioles and the Yankees at Camden Yards. Jordan Lyles gave up, a little bit early and then just kind of rolled through the Yankee lineup. He retired 13 in a row and 17 of the last 18 batters that he faced in this game. And for Jordan Lyles, I mean, across the board, his best start as an Oriole. How about 13 whiffs for Lyles on 106 pitches and 46 swings? That is his top whiffs number of the season. And that most whiffed pitch was his fastball. His 2 different fastballs, the sinker and the 4-seamer, combined for 11 of his 13 whiffs. He got 7 of them on the sinker. He got 4 on the 4-seamer. The Yankees just had no idea what to do with his fastball today. The velo was a little bit up. He averaged 91.5, usually averages just a tick under 91. So that was a good sign. And he just went to work. 7 whiffs on the sinker, again, 4 on the four-seamer. He threw 31 sinkers, 25 four-seamers, and then it was 26 sliders, 16 changeups, and 8 curveballs. And, he got 1 whiff on the slider, he got 1 whiff on the curveball, but those pitches really weren't there today. The curveball was solid, but that was the best Jordan Lyles fastball combo we have ever seen, and he just attacked Yankees hitters with that fastball in the zone. He was at a 48% CSW. That was called strike and whiff percentage with both of those pitches, the sinker and the four-seam fastball. 7 whiffs on that sinker is just an unbelievable number from Jordan Lyles. Listen, you give a guy 1 year, $7 million, a guy who's at a career 5 ERA, gave up the most home runs in baseball last year in Texas. Basically, what you're looking for is give you 180 innings. Well, Lyles is on pace to give the Orioles something close to that. But what he's also doing is pitching better than he has over the last couple of years and pitching better than he did in a Texas uniform. And I still don't think this means Jordan Lyles is a guy who they're going to re-sign and give some big money. But I do think he could be pitching well enough to maybe trade at this deadline. And at the very least, he's going to give the Orioles good innings and hopefully stay healthy and pitch close to that 180 inning mark throughout this 2022 season. And he's been a big help, certainly, to the Orioles rotation. But the second thing you need to know from this one is that the Oriole bullpen came in behind Lyles and they did their job as well. First of all, it was a big bounce back outing for Felix Bautista after he gave up 2 solo home runs in the 9th inning on Monday, came right back out there and did allow a leadoff double to Jose Trevino, but was able to strike out Aaron Hicks, got Aaron Judge to ground out, and then left the game. And CNL Perez came in and did his job, strikes out Anthony Rizzo with a runner in scoring position to end this 8th inning and keep it at a 3-2 game. And then in came Jorge Lopez, and his stuff wasn't at his best, and he did walk a batter with 2 outs, but Lopez puts up a 0 in the top of the 9th to keep it at 3-2. And the bullpen just frankly did in with 3 different pitchers and did its job. And that's really all you can ask from the Oriole bullpen at this point. And again, for Lopez, he didn't get any whiffs on the 6 swings, but he had enough stuff to get some grounders and get out of that 9th inning. Third thing you need to know from this one is that Austin Hays, it seems as if that hand injury, that laceration, did not slow him down one bit. Second game back in the lineup for Austin Hays, and he just puts up another 3-hit day. Hays 3 for 4 on the night with 2 doubles and an RBI and a run scored, up to 296 on the average, 820 on the OPS for Hays, who had 2 hard hit balls, I should say, on the evening. He beat out an infield single in the 8th inning, had a big RBI double in the 6th inning, and just keeping things going and was able to score on a Mancini grounder for that second run in the 6th inning as well, using the speed. Man, he's been fun to watch this year. And we're getting closer and closer for Austin Hays to a point where it almost feels like the 2022 for Hays is looking a lot like the 2021 for Mullins. And man, would that be awesome for the Orioles if they could continue to get that from Hays. He scorched that double in the 6th inning, 108 miles per hour off the bat. He's hitting the ball hard. He's using his speed to get on base. It is just, frankly, it's just fun to watch Austin Hays hit the ball right now. That first double was 100 miles per hour off the bat back in the 1st inning. Just really good stuff from Austin Hays at the dish. But the fourth thing you need to know is that the rest of the Oriole offense didn't quite get it done against Garrett Cole and Clay Holmes in this one. Yankees only used 2 pitchers. Cole gave up 2 runs over 7, and then Holmes pitched the final 2 innings scoreless to close out a 3-2 Yankee victory. And the Orioles' 2 runs on 7 hits is just not going to cut it. Hays had the 3 hits. Other than that, Mullins, Mancini, Odor, and Nevin each had 1 hit of their own. But Hays had the only 2 extra base hits with his 2 doubles on the night. The Orioles did not draw a walk. And despite the fact that their strikeouts were down in this game, they only struck out 6 times, they didn't draw a walk. They only had the 2 extra base hits. And that's why, despite out hitting the Yankees 7-6, they only scored 2 runs and they lost the game. You got to feel like somebody's got to start stepping up to help Austin Hays at this point. But the 5th and final thing that you need to know from the Orioles' 3-2 loss to the Yankees is that despite, only the 2 runs and the 7 hits, the Orioles did really scorched the ball at times in this game. They had 9 hard hit balls in 7 innings against Cole, and they had 3 hard hit balls in the 2 innings against Clay Holmes. I mean, even in the 8th inning, Austin Hayes gets the 1-out infield single. Anthony Santander, who ended up 0 for 4 with a strikeout, scorches a ball down towards right field, but right to Anthony Rizzo, who catches it and steps on the bag for a double play to end the 8th. If he hits that ball just a foot or two to either side, that's a double into the corner. And at worst, it's second and third and 1 out. And maybe Hayes scores from first to tie the game. So just, the O's got a little bit unlucky. And in terms of hard hit balls on the night, I mean, the Orioles were hitting the ball hard. They had 12 hard hit balls again on the night. Mullins, Hayes, Urias, and Nevin each had 2. And everybody in the lineup hit at least 1 ball hard, except for Anthony Bemboom, who was 0 for 3 and is now hitting 118. But everybody else, 1 through 8, had at least 1 hard hit ball. The Orioles had an expected batting average of 261 on the night from those balls that they hit hard. I mean, Ramon Urias in the 9th inning had a 102 mile per hour ground out. That was certainly unlucky. Tyler Nevin had a ground out over 100 miles an hour. Trey Mancini, when he hit into that fielder's choice that scored a run in the 6th inning, 104 off the bat. I mean, you've got the O's hitting these balls hard, and Ramon Urias, 1st inning, lines out to right field with runners on 1st and 3rd and 2 down, 102 off the bat. Mullins lined out at 96 off the bat in that 1st inning. Just some unluckiness. Mateo in the 2nd inning had a line out that was 101 off the bat. I mean, they hit the ball hard in this game, just weren't rewarded, but hopefully that can help them turn the corner, maybe come back and win this Thursday matinee against the Yankees and snap the 6-game losing streak. But, things aren't going very well at the major league level right now for the Orioles. Again, 6 losses in a row. But at the minor league level, things have been very, very fun. Adley Rutschman has now homered in back-to-back nights. Gunnar Henderson is homered in back-to-back nights. Grayson Rodriguez was unbelievable in his start on Tuesday. There's a lot of good things going on. Colton Cowser homered on Wednesday. I know his start's been a little slow here in 2022, but he was able to hit the ball out of the ballpark. And it's been really fun, and especially in Double-A, where Gunnar Henderson specifically has been great. And coming up next, we're going to be joined by John Mioli, who writes for his newsletter, Maximizing Playoff Odds, covering the Orioles. Of course, John has been on this podcast multiple times before, used to cover the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun, and he's going to join us to talk about the Orioles' success in the minor league system, what he saw in Bowie Tuesday night when he was there, including the big day from Gunnar Henderson, how Henderson is developing in the Orioles system. We'll talk about some other guys on the Bowie roster who stand out, and we'll talk a little bit about Adley Rutschman and John's feelings on how the Orioles are handling his hopefully impending call-up to the majors. So that's all coming up next. But first, let's talk about Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar on the market. These bars, they've got 17 grams of protein, just over 200 calories, low in carbs, low in sugars, but high in delicious taste. All these bars covered in 100% real chocolate, great flavors like peanut butter brownie, mint chocolate. You really get it all. But the bars that they have, they're great, but they're not the only product over at Built.com. You can also get the Built Puffs. They are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. You got a marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate, infused with protein, a great, healthy, delicious snack for you to have on the run as well. Those Built Puffs, they are the real deal. Built just continues to put out some amazing products. And if you want to get your hands on these products, head over to Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Again, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. So we welcome in Jon Mioli back to the podcast. Of course, he is the author of Maximizing Playoff Odds, an Orioles newsletter, which you should all be subscribing to continue to read John's work. Of course, he used to cover the Orioles for the Baltimore Sun. He's been on this podcast a few times before, but first time since we've been on YouTube. And first of all, John, welcome back to the pod.
Thank you. It's good to see you. Good to be seen, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, we have you on, obviously, for the first time here since you've started on this new venture in covering the Orioles. So I guess first open-ended question is, how you enjoying covering the team while not, being with a separate outlet and kind of doing your own thing?
Yeah, it's been really cool. I really enjoyed being the Orioles beat writer for the Sun. It was a great job when it became a job, and I feel like the way that they allowed, Nathan and I, and before that, Eddie and Cena and I to shaped the beat into a really cool, modern newspaper beat. Was awesome. We have an 18-month-old daughter, though. I couldn't really go back on the road the way that was going to be required this year. I bought a couple years with COVID, but it was time to make a life change. But I really, I felt pretty strongly that I wanted to be a part of what was happening and be able to tell the stories that I, enjoyed telling the most. So that's basically what I've been doing. I feel a little disconnected from the big league team. Not going to lie. I've only been out to Camden Yards a couple times this year. I have a couple days carved out in the week where I could go and go see a baseball game. So I have to kind of choose my spots, whether I want to be in Bowie or Baltimore, or Aberdeen or Baltimore. So I'm a little disconnected from the big league team. But I feel like the flip side of that is that I have, taken the reins off, and I'm not wondering, who's going to read this story? I'm supposed to be writing about the big league team. Why would I write about, X minor leaguer that people might not care about? Now I don't really have that. I just kind of write all the stories that I want to tell, and the response has been fantastic. I'm blown away by how many people have been following along, and I hope that those who have subscribed to the paid tier are feeling like it's worth it.
Yeah, and it gives you the freedom to write what you want to write about, and people who are paying for this are waiting for whatever you're going to give them, and they are going to read it. And we have you on because I know you were in Bowie on Tuesday night, and it just so happens you got to see Gunnar Henderson go twice. So I want to just start with what you saw in front of you. He jumped the average over 300 and the OPS over 1,000 with that game on Tuesday night. He's the youngest player on the field pretty much every time he goes out there. Like, at what point do you think Gunnar Henderson is really on his progression right now? Because he's hitting well in Double-A, and the murmurs of when's he going to Triple-A, I think, have already started.
Yeah, they definitely have. It's really impressive. I know the Orioles from the time they got him at the alt site in 2020 and really started putting their hands around what this young player was. They were really impressed just by his aptitude, work ethic, and the way that he is able to absorb whatever challenges are being thrown at him. Okay, here's how I overcome that. I think some of that is just raw talent. I mean, he's just, he's a very talented young man. I think a lot of that too is just his competitiveness. There are people in the world who will not be beaten and who will not allow themselves to lose, whether it's, yesterday, I didn't put this in the story because it was kind of like a scattershot story, and I just had to fit a million things into it because there's so many different factors in why he's, kind of taking this leap that he has this year. But him and Tim DeJohn, the fundamentals coach, there was a wheelbarrow out by the foul pole in right field. I'm pointing towards right field of my house. and there's a wheelbarrow out there, and they were going to have a competition of who could get the, throw a ball into one shot each. Gunnar threw it, and Tim DeJohn had the fungo. And they were going to try to they were spending a lot of time setting up what the rules and the contest was and what we're going to do. And this is somebody who is really competitive about anything. He's competitive with himself. He's competitive with those around him. So it's been fascinating to see over the course of the last year, from when he got to Del Mar and dominated, and then went to Aberdeen and struggled, and got to the playoff taste in Bowie now again, just how he has internalized the things that have happened to him, how he's pitched, how he's performed, how he's felt about how he's performed, and just use that to say, okay, what do I need to do better? He went home and realized he was struggling with high fastballs, so he just hit against, a pitching machine with rise all winter. He wanted to feel a little more comfortable in the box, so he changed. He used to be he used to just literally stand dead still until he decided to swing, and that worked. He did well with it to an extent, but now he has a little rhythm in his. He's always trying to find ways to improve what he needs to improve on, which is a very basic thing to say, but I think that the level with which it works for him is really, really impressive. And that probably has something to do with the fact that he's so young. This is a growth period of somebody's life. When you're 20 years old and you're applying yourself to something every day, you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to learn quickly. So a long answer is that he is I think that there is definitely an upswing happening with him. I wouldn't say, book his ticket to Norfolk next week, because, once you play well in Norfolk, they really don't have any choice but to call you up to the big leagues, or so we think. So I think it'll be a little more deliberate, but there's something really interesting happening there.
Yeah, and he continues this kind of small trend where, I think everyone who has seen the Orioles' first-round picks under Mike Elias saying, he's going college bats no matter what, and he's only picking college players. But the Orioles have picked and chosen their spots in terms of drafting high school guys, and it has really worked out. I mean, obviously it worked out for Dan Duquette getting DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez out of high school, but to get Gunnar Henderson and to get Kobe Mayo, obviously, and we're finally seeing Carter Baumler get back on the field and he's pitching in the FCL. Yeah, they're not taking a lot of high school guys, but when they go after a Creed Willems, a Gunnar Henderson, a Kobe Mayo, it seems to work out. And it seems like, at least in that part of the process, they are really good at identifying the right high school fit for them. And Henderson seemed to be a guy who was certainly a top end of the first round talent, and they were able to get him, in that second round, I think, or that competitive balance round at the end of the first.
Yeah. He fell to them, and I was doing a story on David Jennings, the scout, who is that he's that Alabama, South. I guess you call it. It's not really like Florida or Georgia, but like all the rest of the South, basically from that area where Gunnar Henderson was coming up. And I asked Gunnar when I was doing the story if he had any, experience with him, like any funny stories to tell. And he basically said he filled out a questionnaire for him, and that was it. The Orioles kind of just had this player fall into their lap, and I think that there's a lot of reasons why they took him. It's not like they were like, oh, this guy's famous and he should have gone 20 picks ago, let's take him. It's not like they've done that before too, and it hasn't worked out in other iterations of the draft. But this player, came to them. I think that you're exactly right. It's something I've been thinking about a lot as this draft is coming up with, like, oh, the Orioles have such a reputation for taking these college bats, and it's quick to the majors and more reliable data, and you have more sample size to project out from. But even add Darell Hernandez to this list, there haven't really been, I guess you could say, any misses on like the high school draftees that they've signed, and that is really, I think, going to be a factor as they're making their choices. There's a lot of things that go into this. We talk about Hernandez. I believe Gunnar Henderson as well was pretty young for his draft class. So I think there's an aspect of that when you're talking about high school draftees, where if they're a young 18, you're getting basically a full extra year of that development time in those peak development years that I was talking about with Gunnar Henderson. So I think there's something to that, but you're absolutely right. This is not, I think they generally just know what they're looking for in hitters. And I think it might be harder to believe what you're seeing when you're talking about a high school kid who has XM showcase, data and batted ball data and everything like that, but they're picking their spots with it. And I think it's been really effective.
Yeah, I think, the Gunnar Henderson success so far and a guy like Kobe Mayo shows you that the Orioles just aren't going to, definitely take a Brooks Lee with the first pick here in a couple months. Like Tamar Johnson, Elijah Green, Drew Jones, they are all certainly in play for the Orioles. But we'll get back to chatting those minor leagues with John Mioli in just a second. But first, got to tell you about betonline.ag. That's the one-stop shop for all of your sports wagering needs. And betonline.net. That's where you can go to get all the odds for all the games, not just Major League Baseball, but of course the NBA playoffs into the Eastern and Western Conference Finals, and the NHL playoffs into the second round as well, getting going. WNBA season starting up here as well, and a whole lot of golf, including a major this weekend, and you can get all the odds at betonline.net. But you can also log on and check the score to keep up with your bets. You can check out news, injury news as well, to make you the smartest gambler. And you can also listen to podcasts just like this one. So head over to betonline.net, where the game starts. So we're here with Jon Meoli, writer of his newsletter, Maximizing Playoff Odds, covering the Orioles at the major and a lot at the minor league level. And he was in Bowie on Tuesday night. We talked about Gunnar Henderson, but wanted to just get, a couple thoughts on, anything else you really saw in Bowie Tuesday. And I know in terms of the pitchers, you got to see Ryan Watson, who wasn't at his best, but he's been really good at times this year. Easton Lucas, who, came over in the Jonathan VR trade a couple of years ago, and then an older right-hander in Shelton Perkins. Did any of those three guys you saw pitch really catch your eye? I know people have been kind of, looking at Watson a little closer this year after being an undrafted free agent.
Yes. Yeah. So I was actually, I guess it was 2 weeks ago. I was at an earlier Ryan Watson start. I had to leave the game early. But the game ended up getting delayed. I think there was some stuff going on there that made it so that they couldn't start the game right away. And I saw a little there, and it was similar to this one where it was just, a lot of batted balls, a lot of 50-50, could have been an out, could have been a hit. he has a good pitch mix. I was asking someone about him before that game, and they mentioned that, the Orioles had let him go back to a more natural arm slot, something that felt a little more comfortable to him. And he ticked up, pretty significantly. He was like an 89, 91, guy in 2021, and coming off of, a COVID year and being a senior sign, like that's probably to be expected. I think they were expecting a lot of guys to have that pick up, but this year he was averaging 90, and some of that was out of the pen. It was like longer release. It was sitting like 92, 94 yesterday. So I think that's something that's interesting, but there might be more of a there if he's able to just go out there and air it out for an inning or two, something shorter. But he was definitely someone that, I was interested to see, and I'm still, interested to follow. When I was talking to some of the scouts that I know who had seen him earlier before the looks that I got there, one of them just straight up said he's a beast. And this guy is not somebody who, throws compliments like that around, lightly. So it was definitely interesting to see him. That pitching staff obviously has been pretty, they're not healthy at the moment. And I think that that's changed a lot of, that team's complexion, how they have to go about games on a daily basis. But I think that him being in the rotation and some of the guys being stretched as they are is kind of a symptom of that.
And then, looking at that Bowie lineup, obviously we talked about Gunnar Henderson. He hits 2 home runs in that game Tuesday night. You've got the Jordan Westburgs. You've got the Shane Fontanas, who's red hot right now and kind of, maybe not a prospect, but, one of these guys who's trying to get himself to prospect status, trying to become 2022 Pat Dorian, basically, with his early season. Anybody, you're only seeing 4 plate appearances, but I know you've been to a couple of games, and anybody stick out in that Bowie lineup besides obviously Henderson, who's been the star there all year so far?
Yeah. I think Jordan Westburg is starting to come around a little bit. I think he had a little bit of a slow stretch earlier in the season. I think that the same goes for Joey Ortiz. He was coming off the shoulder surgery last year. He was obviously one of the breakout prospects and somebody the Orioles were really excited about after the 2020 shutdown. I think you're starting to see a little better contact from him, a little, obviously fantastic defense at second and short. There's no denying that. And those are 2 of the players that really stuck out to me. It's an interesting team because, we're the guys who would be in Double-A right now, you have some of the 2020 draftees who have kind of shot up there quickly, but the 2019 draftees that the Orioles took, the guys who might have been on, like, there weren't really any, like, a ton of, other than Gunnar Henderson and I guess Darrell Hernandez, there's a ton of, like, high school, like, slower development types. Like, a lot of the top picks, like, they have already gone past that level where you would think, like, this would be if they were going slowly with players, they would be at Bowie. So it's a little bit of an uneven mix of talent, and I think that some of the health issues that have been happening down there have made it an uneven roster. But I think it's a really interesting team, and obviously when you have somebody like Gunnar Henderson, I didn't mention Hudson Haskin, somebody who's had a fantastic season that I think is he's just a really interesting, like, talent, for lack of a better word. He does a lot of things well, and I think that's the type of player the Orioles have never really had a ton of success with, that, like, tooled out center fielder who they, like, hope for the more. Cedric Mullins was a little more developed when he was drafted. Same goes for someone like Austin Hayes, even though he's more of a corner guy who can play center. I think that the Hudson Haskin type, the Orioles constantly try to take chances on those kind of guys, the younger guys, the guys who are like, all right, if X, Y, and Z happens, this is going to be really good. And I think that there are some early signs that they're having success with that.
Yeah, they did it again with Reed Trimble as well, who obviously has been out for most of the season, but he's back in the lineup in the FCL, trying to get his way back. Just a tooled up, younger outfielder who can play all 3 positions, and they're excited about. And hopefully, one of these guys can hit, and they can add him to the great slew of outfielders they've got in the system. But John, while I have you here, last thing, this is obviously the word of the week in Birdland is, when are we going to see Adley Rutschman? And I know you don't have somebody in your ear telling you exactly when we're going to, but I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about, where the Orioles are at with Rutschman now, because he's done with rehab. I mean, he's back to AAA. He's back to the level he was at, and he seems to be healthy. And, he homered on Tuesday night in Norfolk, and Orioles fans are hoping that maybe Friday is the day that he comes up. But I was wondering if you had just any thoughts on how, the O's are handling it now that he seems to be fully healthy and is still in AAA Norfolk.
Yeah, I mean, they might have made a terrible mistake by even suggesting that he needed to do something performance wise to get himself to the leagues, because I feel like Adley Rutschman's the type who could be like, all right, you need me to hit, like I can hit. You told me to be patient for 3 years and I've been patient. Now you need me to hit. All right, I'll hit. But I think that it's just really tough. It's really a tough, not development. I don't even, it's just kind of unfortunate that like something that is going to be a transformative moment for this franchise and for the fan base and for the major league team and the farm system, all these guys who have been, had this guy, Adley Rutschman, even though he's their peer and he's their friend, help as a paragon of pretty much everything that they want to do, whether it's how to go at bats, how to control the strike zone, how to go about your business every day. Him and see how he goes about his business, and they know that because of the talent he has, that's what they should be doing. They know esteem Adley Rutschman is, and that's what they should be doing. This is a big moment for everybody, and does it really matter over the course of a rebuild that's going on for 3, 4, or many years, and a team that hopes to be successful through what they've done over those last couple of years, decade, maybe. Does do 2, 3, 4 days matter? Does a week matter? Not really. But why does it have to be why does it have to be this thing? Why does it have to be people screaming on the radio and tisk for saying he's not ready yet, or saying, tissing the Orioles for saying that he should be up by now? It's just really like, why is there's so many things that warrant that when it comes to the Orioles and their rebuild, and there are so many things that have deservedly, become these, flashpoints for whatever you think about the Orioles and what they're doing, and some of them are legitimate and some of them are completely legitimate, and this one's just unnecessary. Like, this doesn't need to be like this. This is, whenever it happens, it's going to be like a transformative day, like I said. So why does it have to be that there's all this, like, why does it have to be that there's a discourse about it, and that's not to say that shouldn't happen. Like, this is all anybody could think about. The team was playing well. People had that date circled on the calendar. All of a sudden, a couple guys get hurt. Team stops hitting, and there's no Adley Rutschman, and everyone's kind of like, what the heck? And that's silly. Like, nobody from the Orioles told people to buy tickets for Monday. But that's what common sense dictated, and it's just not what happened. And whether that's the right or wrong thing is not really for me to say. I just don't understand what is being gained and whether it's worth it to have this be the energy and the atmosphere around Adley Rutschman's potential major league debut.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up being unfortunate that, if it does come Friday, if it does come on the road, if it does come next homestand, whatever it may be, then it's almost going to be like a finally / relief feeling, as much as it will be a let's rejoice, go to the ballpark, like he's here feeling. And again, it was a made up date by a lot of people Monday night. Like, that was never hinted at. It was more of a people doing some mental math and feeling like that was the date. But that's where we are, and hopefully we do get to see him this week. But John, thank you so much for joining us once again. Before you go, let everybody know where they can check out your writing and how they can subscribe to the newsletter.
Yeah, so I'm putting everything out on Twitter, obviously. Still trying not to tweet as much as I used to, which is going pretty well. And you can also subscribe at jonmeoli.substack.com. There's one free article every week for everybody, and there's a paid tier. We're doing 2 or 3 on top of that. It's going to be a big week, not only for hopefully what we just talked about, but in terms of all the affiliates being home and being able to go and pick up some stories, everywhere, and get myself going. It's going to be I'm excited. I think there's going to be some cool stories coming out of this.
Well, thanks, John, so much for joining us. And I know the great writing will continue over at the newsletter. That is over at Substack, and you can subscribe to that and support John's work as he continues to cover the Orioles.
Awesome. Thanks.
So that has been John Mioli of Maximizing Playoff Odds, the newsletter covering the O's. We'll be back with another episode on Friday. Hopefully, we'll be talking about Adley Rutschman's impending debut, but we will see. But this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team